growing up, my mom worked in a print shop, and she had been there longer than some of the men that were in her same department, and she made less pay than they did. And so from early on as a child, I've had that sense of, I don't know, lack of fairness, I guess you could say.
In 1997, I was Miss South Dakota, and that year, my platform for Miss America happened to be women in business and women equality. And that conversation led me to looking at the inequalities in the pay. And in 1997, women were making about 74 cents for every man's dollar. And I believe today, you just said this, as of this year, we're making about 77 cents for every man's dollar. So that just shows you, after how many years, what's 1997 now, almost 16 years later, that we've only gained ground by about 3 or 4 cents.
The bank that I work for tries to keep things relatively fair, but there is still a difference. Men, unfortunately, in our bank are promoted faster than women are. That's probably our greatest downfall.
In previous positions, I was a trust officer for a local bank, and I would say that probably, you never know exactly what another person makes, but I would say that, yeah, I think it was pretty commonly assumed that women were making less than men, so it was kind of unfortunate, but.
As being younger and maybe somewhat less experienced, so to speak, in the workforce, I don't think a lot of us really know if we have been not paid fairly. I think that's probably the bigger question is, do you know if you have been paid unfairly?
I taught school for quite a while, and I did find it interesting that the men who taught classes were paid much more than those of us who did not work football and things like that. At the same time, I was expected to do other tasks on behalf of, I would have to organize the books and work with certain students on special projects, and yet my pay never reflected that. And I always kind of wondered how they justified the amount of time that I spent with students. You didn't receive anything extra over it, and yet every single sport event they were very well paid for. And I have to say I did kind of resent that over the years.
A woman on my dissertation committee when I was in graduate school, I was an expert in gender discrimination. In her dissertation, she studied the arc of time over 2 professions. One was teaching, the other one was telephone operators. And what she found was at the beginning of the 20th century, most of those jobs were held by men. And over the 20th century, as we all know, most of those jobs ended up being held by women. And as the job changed from being male-dominated to female-dominated, the prevailing wage in the profession went down.
I read an article recently that said if the gender pay gap continues to close at the rate that it's currently closing, it will take 50 years.
Some things in my interest is in the societal impact. Too often, in my opinion, the issue is portrayed as, well, this is unfair to women. And of course, the impact of it is unfair to everyone. Okay, are you married to a woman? Was a woman your mother? Do you have a daughter? All of those people are affected. And one of the articles said that were the gender pay gap fixed, it would add 500,000 to 1 million jobs to the economy. That's equal to or greater than the stimulus bill that was put in effect several years ago in response to the financial crisis. It's an enormous impact for a college-educated woman. All you college-educated women sitting out there, the difference in pay due to the gender pay gap over a lifetime is $1 million.
I think that there article I read said something like $11,000 a year pay differential if you've been discriminated against. That's the average. You think about what $11,000, the difference that would make in a household income, and what that would allow you to buy. So it isn't just a matter of the woman, it's the family that is affected. And I think they said, on average, $400,000 over your lifetime, up to $1 million. So it has a long-term impact. Think about what that money would buy as far as lifestyle. Huge impact.
It's both a simple process and a very complicated process. It has to do with valuing jobs for what they contribute to the organization without regard to who holds the job and all that kind of stuff. So if you have a value for the job and you have those on some kind of a scale from least valuable to most valuable for whatever the organization is doing, then you plot that on a graph with how much the people are paid. It should be some kind of a straight line that tilts upward, right? Because as the contribution of the job to the organization goes up, the compensation of the job should go up equally. Of course, what you find in real organizations, we were just talking about this in a class a couple of weeks ago, is you put the dots and it looks like the graph has the measles because the dots are all over the chart, not on a line. The ones above the line means the people are overpaid, and the ones below the line means they're underpaid. And so the first thing you do is you make something like that. Then you go to the higher-ups and you say, we need to get these people, I didn't just say women, these people who aren't compensated properly for what they're doing up to the line. And then we're going to have to slow down the rate of pay increase for the ones above the line so that they come back to being equal. That's a huge job. A lot of managers don't want to get into it because it's time-consuming. But if you don't do it, you leave in place a fundamental impairment.
Women business owners make less than half of what male business owners make, which, since they have no boss, seems that it must be independent of discrimination. The reason for the disparity, I'm quoting from an article, the reason for the disparity, according to the Rochester Institute of Technology study, is that money is a primary motivator for 76% of men versus only 29% of women. Women place a higher premium on shorter work weeks, proximity to home, fulfillment, autonomy, and safety.
Here's what the science says about the issues that Dr. Whitmire raised. It is true that there are life choices, there is the issue of bearing children, and then there's the separate thing that we talked about, that some professions are paid less, some disciplines are paid less in universities and so forth. When you put all of that into a large-scale equation, what they find is that 40% of the gender pay gap is due directly to gender discrimination. Jobs taking care of small wild animals, like at zoos, are more held by men than women. There's a balance, but there's more held by men than women. Jobs taking care of little human beings are by far held more by women than men. Zookeepers are paid more than daycare workers. Why? I just think it's part of a very long arc of historical patterns that we as a society have to turn against.
I appreciated your comments about women, but at the same time, if we aren't just raising women, we're also raising men. And if you really want to have an impact on the world, get the boys to understand how important it is that they are able to work on an even basis with women, that they can communicate with them, that they're comfortable with them. There's too many times you run into these guys that are macho. I don't think their mother's common thing. And I've seen it over and over again. They spend time trying to get the girls to learn how to go out and get a job and manage, but they're not teaching the guys that are maybe going to be hiring the girls that they should give them the same respect. And I do think that sometimes society itself is screwed up in this way.
when you're making those hiring decisions, because you'll be in management as you progress through your careers, remember these conversations. And remember that you have the authority and the ability to make it right.